the gift of the human imagination. We have to be careful now that we use this gift wisely and that we avert some of the scenarios that we've talked about. And the only way we'll do it is by seeing our creative capacities for the richness they are and seeing our children for the hope that they are. And our task is to educate their whole being so they can face this future. By the way, we may not see this future, but they will. And our job is to help them make something of it.
Hello, boys and girls, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to The Real Talk. I hope you're all doing well, keeping safe. And if you're new to the channel, this is a platform for open-minded individuals to share their ideas, share their experiences, so that we can learn from each other, help each other, and make a positive impact on this world and on each other. And if you're new to the channel, please subscribe, like, share. We want to grow this community. We want to share these positive experiences with other people. Joining me once again is Triv. Bro, how are you doing? And welcome back. It's been a few weeks since you've been on.
It's good to be back on The Real Talk. Took a little bit of a break for various reasons, but it's good to be back. And I think there's a topic today that I'm quite passionate about, considering what I'm doing at the moment. So looking forward to getting right back into it. I just want to say also thank you for the feedback on the previous videos, especially the mental health videos. I think there's some interesting stuff that's come out from it. I think the videos have been really good, Rail. I was surprised even without me in the video. You did a really good job. I think it was
bro.
really educational stuff. I think there's going to be some even more interesting stuff coming out in the future.
Thanks, bro, for those kind words, which are quite unusual coming from you. So I highly appreciate that. But it is because of the people. So you out there can come on and share your experiences, not just me or Triv. This is a platform for everyone. So like you mentioned, this topic we're going to speak about, it is quite interesting, and we both wanted to talk about it, and we have mentioned briefly in our previous videos. I think the fear culture one, motivation one, we always go back to the education system. And of course it is so important to understand and talk about it. Sorry, a lot of the things we've spoken about on the channel are mostly related to like us as individuals and internal factors and how we can improve, but we have to look at also the external factors and how that impacts us. So this is, I think, one of the first topics, which is quite a big and interesting topic to speak about, and people have been talking about this for years, is the education system. Now, with most things, we always have to look at the positives and negatives. Or I wouldn't call them the negatives, but things we can improve on, or we can talk or share experiences where we can learn from and maybe apply that in our lives or in our communities later in life, or in a positive or healthy way. So starting with the positives, and just before we get into it, I just want to mention that Triv and I are speaking from our experiences. Of course, this doesn't apply to everyone. We went to schools in different countries, so you might have a completely different experience. But I think in most countries it's quite similar, especially we both grew up in Africa. Even though Africa is huge and has many countries, there are quite a few similarities in the education system. So Triv, let's start with the positives. You growing up or going to school, what did you find, and when you look back into your childhood or when you were in school, what was the positive that you got out of from our education system?
Look, I think something that stands out for me in particular is a piece of literature that we did in English. I believe it was grade 10 or grade 11, where we studied and read and analyzed Down Second Avenue, a book by Ezekiel Bashlele. And I think that book stood out for me because I grew up in an Indian community. I went to school. I went to schools, primary and high school, that had a mix of different races in the school. Uh, but I was very sheltered in terms of my knowledge of the past and what South Africa had gone through. And I think something that I benefited a lot from just a piece of literature was understanding a little bit of what people went through in my own country, what people that were still alive today, parents of kids that were at my school, what they experienced maybe 15, 20 years ago from the time that I was sitting in that classroom. So I think for me, a positive, like you mentioned, that I would take out of my experiences at school is that African literature gave me a little bit of an insight into what it was like in apartheid and post-apartheid South Africa. So yeah, I think for me, developing, I would say developing, because it wasn't touched on massively, but it did give me a little bit of an exposure to life that I knew nothing about. So yeah, I think for me that's one of the positives that I took out of my schooling
Okay.
experience. And how
Yeah.
about you? If you had to pick one or two, what would one of those
Yeah.
be?
So the pretty straightforward one I would say is reading and writing. Of course, our education system enables that for us to read and write and therefore communicate later on in life, which is, I mean, very, very important. It's very simple, but it does that, and I highly appreciate that. And, it helped us later on in life. So I don't think there's much more to say on that, but something that I can speak a little bit more, and I was very, very happy with what our education system taught us is analytical thinking. So, like when we were kids, we wonder why we do maths and sciences, and, that they don't make sense. But when you grow older, you realize that how that shapes your thinking. If you're thrown into a situation through logic and through analytical thinking, you can kind of find a way to a solution. So that, I think, without you realizing it as a child, when you grow older, you realize that you have picked that up from our education system and from a young age. And I did like maths, so of course I'm a little bit biased because I was good at it and I liked it, but I'm sure other people probably struggle with it. But in terms of what I picked out and what I benefited was from those kind of subjects. And yeah, did you have any other positives that you could pick out from our education system?
This is specific to the schools that I attended. I was lucky enough to attend. Sports. I think the sporting side of school is so underrated in terms of the benefit that stays with you when you move into the adult phase of your life. It's not about playing cricket, it's not about playing hockey, it's not about playing football. It's learning to be part of a team, it's learning discipline. And those are things that have stayed with me. So I played in sports teams, number one, where I had to attend practice at a certain time. I had to do certain things in that team. I had to work with people from different backgrounds, different races, and I think that being a part of the sports team in schools, or different sports teams in schools, really benefited me in terms of learning how to be a contributing member in a team.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of people don't like working in teams. A lot of people would rather just do something on their own. But I think the reality of life is when you're in the working
Yeah,
world.
there's a saying that
um,
says no one is an island. You have to
Yeah.
come across, like, everyone. We have to interact with people and work in teams, whether you like it or not. So, yeah, that's a really good example. And I also benefited from that. We both love sports and we played sports. But moving on from the positives and what we really want to speak about, right, is what we think our education system lacks, or what we growing up, going to school, would have different or being taught differently. So what I would say improvements, or what did you wish you had in school?
I think in South Africa, the very first thing that, and this is specific to South Africa, but it's specific because it's my background. But if you look around the world, it's something that's happening everywhere, and that's social inequalities, addressing issues that are bubbling under the surface. You would say, or term it as. And I think it's ignored in our schooling system. I think person A is given a task and person B is given the same task, and there's no acknowledgement that the resources that person A has is different from the resources that person B has. The experience that person A has is different from the experience that person B has. And I think it's something that is difficult to speak about. It's not easy for people to say, look, this is what happened in South Africa. A certain group of people benefited from this, a certain group of people didn't benefit from this. But I think by ignoring it at a young age, it's not helping anybody. Like I said, I felt that I had to read a book in order for me to develop that knowledge. Whereas I think if we sat in a room once or twice a week for a couple of hours and we were allowed to learn about what happened from both sides. I know we spoke a little earlier about history being written by winners and not just by but by winners and not from the other side. I think if you have a constructive conversation about experiences that different people are having, and you start that at school level, you educate people to be aware of what the person next to you is going through, has gone through in the past. So that when you say things and when you do things, you're doing it from an educated point of view. You're not so oblivious to what's going on.
It kind
in
of
somebody
creates
else's
empathy,
life.
right? It creates
Yeah,
empathy.
exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
And
And I think if we don't do that at a school level, we're hoping as a society that as we move into adulthood, we somehow learn this empathy through our speaking, through our speaking to different people, through friendships. And that's not always the case. That's quite evidently not always the case. And I do think that that needs to be addressed in our schooling system first and
That's-
foremost. We cannot pretend that these inequalities just simply didn't exist.
Oh, that is a really, really great point. And a few weeks ago, like we were talking off air, I watched this video with Emma Watson. Most of you will know her from Harry Potter, the girl who played Hermione. I hope I've got her name right, but I'm sure
Yeah.
it is Emma Watson, right? And she spoke about how, I think for work or for some documentary or something, she went to Africa. I don't know which country specifically, but she was quite shocked learning their history, which was obviously most of those countries were colonized by the British, and she is British. So what they were taught in school about history and what she learned in Africa was completely different. And she, like you said, the history is taught from a victor's point of view. And unfortunately, in most African countries, it wasn't the victor; they were the victims. And that's why that lack of empathy comes from that. Because if your education system is just teaching of how these great nations just conquered and they were so superior and they're great, that automatically in your mind sets you, and you start thinking you're superior than everyone else. But if you learn from their point of view, it comes to an equal balance. So that's a really great point. And I want to move on to the next point, which I feel, and I'm sure you'll agree, and many people out there will agree, is I strongly believe from the education system that I was given that it killed my creativity, right? There's a really, really good TED talk from Sir Ken Robinson. It is called Education Killing Creativity or something. I'll put the link of the video in the description. It's got it's the most viewed video on TED Talk, I think. Sadly, Sir Ken Robinson passed away this year, here in 2020. He was a British author, speaker, an international advisor on education in the arts to government, non-profits, education, and so basically he was really into education. And what he spoke about, which what I took from his talk, the really important point was that we don't grow into creativity, we grow out of it. So, we're all born this creative humans, babies, kids, and it's just like hammered out of it through our education system. It kind of refines you. It takes out all the rough edges, and it keeps you mainly streamlined in a certain way, in the way that they want you to think. Education system don't allow for mistakes, right? You're always scared of being wrong. We mentioned in the fear culture video, and if you aren't prepared to be wrong, then you'll never come up with anything original, and that's a fact. Yeah, if you're always fearful, you're never going to if you're always scared to make mistakes, how are you going to think of something original? Because you're always going to follow something that's already been done. And that's why our education system is so outdated. It comes from the industrial age system, where people were channeled. I don't know how it was for you, right? But they were channeled like factory workers and to follow instructions. Like in our school, we went to class, we were told where to sit. We have each period, so you have maths for 1 hour, the bell rings, and then you have English for 1 hour, then the bell rings. So everything is taught or controlled in a certain way when you're in school. It kills autonomy, and I think autonomy is so important for children. It was basically a right or wrong system. There was no room for creativity or growth, or for you to think on your own. You were told exactly what you need to learn. So my teacher would come in, open this and that textbook, go to page 74, do question 5. So, I mean, you're basically told every single thing, and you're not given the chance or opportunity to be creative. And in caveat to that, there are a few countries. I did my research. So Finland, right, which their education system is quite advanced, I would say. They have only one exam, and that exam is very broad based. It's not like right or wrong. Do you know 2/3 of their students end up with the top grades in universities, because they're known to have this completely different system, and they don't have bells, or they don't have like structured classes. It's very free flow, it's very creative, and that I think we can learn. A lot of countries or systems can learn from them, because it is helpful, it is educational, and those students go on to do really great things. So they're very progressive minded, and I love the way the education system works, and I hope other countries can adapt that.
So I want to expand on that a little bit, because I don't know if we've mentioned on the channel before, but I at the moment I am in China, and I am teaching English as a second language to the kids here, and that aspect of creativity is so important. And this is not me beating the Chinese drum, because the Chinese school system is much like the other school systems, like you mentioned, that autonomy is taken away. But I've had numerous parents. We have what we call parent teacher conferences. So your normal teachers parents come to school, speak to the teacher. How's my kid doing? The amount of times, so this TEFL industry, or this English as a second language industry, is the most creative version of education that I've ever been exposed to. And I've had parents say to us in these teachers' meetings, my kid will happily do this homework. My kid will happily come to class. Remember that what we're doing is extra curricular activities. It's not part of their school. They come to us at 6:30, 7:30, 8:30 at night for these extra classes, and these are kids anywhere from 3 years old to about 14 or 15 years old. And parents come up to us and they're like, I don't understand. My kid is so willing to come to this class even though they've had a full day at school. And the reason behind it is that we refer to something called teacher talk time. And we don't spend time with kids sitting in chairs just listening to us drone on about this is the point, this is the grammar point, this is what we're doing. One of the concepts that we use is we try to get kids to figure out grammar points on their own. So we'll put a couple of examples up on the board, and we'll give them time to brainstorm. Can you, from these three sentences, can you work out what the rule for this grammar point is? They're involved in their learning. We're not just giving them the answers for everything. There is a textbook, but we're not telling them open the textbook and read the rules. And by doing that, they're allowed to creatively understand and think, how does the English language work? And there are some kids, like in any situation, who don't do well, who aren't particularly strong, and then there are quite a few kids, I'd say the majority of kids that we teach, that are just excelling in this creative environment. They're able to that spark in their eye when they're able to figure out a grammar point that the teacher didn't have to explain to them is different to what it is when I give you the answer as a teacher.
Before I forget, you mentioned something very quickly, right? On like some kids, not everyone's going to enjoy that, right? And that's another flaw of the education system we went to. We're all different and unique. But why is it that we're all taught the same thing and we're expected to all, pass those exams at the end? Now, you're really good in English, right? And speaking and you studied completely something different than I did. I'm good at maths and accounting and stuff. But then we both went to the same school, like we would be in the same education system teaching the exact same thing.
Yeah.
And that's another thing I don't agree with. We don't have many options to explore our creativity or explore our interest and our passion. So I think you made I just wanted to add to the point you made about each individual child, preferring or learning at a different pace even. Everyone but then in schools you have to learn at the same pace, and you have to pass all the exams. All the exams is the same. So they don't cater for uniqueness and individuality, which is one of the most beautiful aspects of human nature, that we're all so different.
I think that's the perfect segue into something else that I want to talk about. So you mentioned that we both went through the same system and ended up taking different paths. Those paths, I think, are not explained well enough in South African school systems. I'm not going to pretend that I understand every single school system around the world. It's in the Indian community, we're told I can't remember the term now. Is it S6? I think it's S6. We're told the big three subjects. You have to do science, you have to do biology, and you have to do accounting. So you have to pick those subjects. If you want to be successful in life, you have to fix those subjects. Bullshit. That's utter bullshit. That is the sort of stuff that makes kids start to dislike school. Exactly. I'm forced to go to school to do accounting because my life isn't going to work out positively if I don't do the subject in school. Do you know how little that subject means in your life? Why shouldn't you be allowed to do art? Why shouldn't you be encouraged to do economics? Why shouldn't you be encouraged to do something that, one, will make you want to go to school, instead of making you want to go to school and then jump over a wall 30 minutes into your school day and go do drugs around the corner or get drunk around the corner? If you are actually enjoying what you're doing at school, it'll make such a big difference towards children's attitudes to wanting to be at school. So please, parents listening to this,
I have a very good example, actually, of what you just mentioned. Danny, my younger brother. Shout out to him. He does all the editing of the videos. These videos don't just pop out like this. Triv and I have no idea. So a massive shout out to Danny. He's the
What
one
are
who
you
does all
talking
the-
about editing? We don't make any mistakes. We just flow
yeah,
straight
we're
through.
perfect. We just go straight through the whole podcast without any errors. But Danny in school, right? He hated school. Like he never like touched a book. He didn't like going to school. He didn't like studying. But he was a smart guy. He managed to pass everything and just make it through. And then, but as a kid, he was always into phones or laptops or computers. Now, at that age, at that time, we weren't taught as much in school on about computers and stuff. Maybe it's changed now. But then, my mom was really worried. She always thought, how is he, what is he going to do with his life? But like my dad always said, don't worry, he will find something, he'll find his path. But the thing is, that wasn't going to come from the education system he was in. He had to find it out for himself. So when later on, he grew older, he went to a specialized college which taught IT and developing and programming, and now that's the field he works in. So that's exactly what the education system didn't allow someone like him to learn from a young age, but later on he had to learn it himself or find it out for himself. But if the education system allowed you to explore those options, then that would be amazing. You wouldn't have to spend so much time looking for your passion if it was already encouraged from a young age. Thank you everyone for watching and staying with us on this really interesting discussion on the education system. We will have a part 2 because I think there's so much more we can discuss on this, and we will discuss on it. So please, look out for the part 2, which will be out in a week's time. And thank you so much for joining us. And please support, like, share, subscribe. And we will see you all in part 2.